This morning on BRN, the hidden cost of car ownership. Joining me now to discuss this, Shannon Martin of Bankrate. Shannon, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeffrey.
Well, so many Americans, we're past Labor Day. There may be some automotive sales, people out shopping for new vehicles. And a current Bankrate study says that car ownership for Americans, may have close to $7,000 of hidden expenses. I want to get your take on that. And what are some of those hidden expenses?
Well, Bankrate's hidden cost of car ownership study wanted to take a deep dive into what extra costs are Americans incurring after they purchase a vehicle. So we looked at four different categories. It was car insurance, maintenance, gas, and taxes. And we found that on average, Americans spend about $557 per month in these hidden expenses. And that's on top of what they're already paying for their car loan or lease payments.
Yeah. And I wonder, when someone goes to buy a car, if they're actually factoring in a lot of these things, like, okay, I love that Dodge Charger or that Grand Cherokee, and I want it, and I can pay that fee, that monthly payment, whether it's a lease or a loan. But I wonder if they're aware of, like, hey, that's going to be higher octane gas. I'm going to have to pay more for that, or what's it going to do to my car insurance?
Exactly. Buying a car tends to be an emotional decision. We all have our favorite cars that we see on the road. And so with this study, I really want, potential car buyers to reframe how they're thinking about car ownership. I was an agent for 16 years, and so I would get the phone call. Someone's excited about their new car they're going to get. It's going to be a Ford, but they don't know what kind of Ford and they don't have the VIN number. So then the quotes that you get at the beginning, they don't line up when you're at the dealership about to walk out with your car. Now dealerships have complete VIN numbers of all their cars online. So what I would look for people to do is take a look online, price out different types of cars with the full VIN number, call your agent. They'll give you a two-penny quote. That way you'll find the car that fits within your insurance budget, and then you can shop from there going forward, and you won't be so surprised down the road if your car insurance creeps up because you've accounted for those costs already.
Yeah, and by all accounts, car insurance has been on the rise. I think kind of rebounding from the post, the pandemic where people didn't drive very much, and I guess there's a recalibration there. Are there certain states that have less expenses versus others? For example, a New York versus Alabama, as an example.
Yes, we found that Georgia actually came up with the highest hidden cost of vehicle expense. Drivers in Georgia spend over $8,200 per year compared to the US average of $6,600 per year. And then New Hampshire actually has the lowest expense by half, around $4,299 per year. And one of the things that we found interesting is that, of course, car insurance does play a big factor, but so does annual mileage. How much you drive your vehicle can impact the cost of your car insurance and your gas and car maintenance expenses.
And do people have some of those drive, and you have like a chip, I don't know what you call it, like an RFID that sits in the car, can actually track your driving behavior. Does that seem to mitigate some of that expense? So if you're willing to, I guess, let the insurer see some of your behavior, you can actually get some discounts, or maybe you go for some additional training.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So what you're talking about is telematics. And a lot of companies are offering that now where you can put either a little device in your car or use your cell phone, and it'll track not just how much you drive, but how hard you brake, what time of night you're driving, how fast you're going, things like that. And so if you feel confident in your driving skills, it's great to participate. You can find a good savings. I know that I have a heavy foot on the gas. So I don't do that because I'm worried about my rate going up once they see how I drive. Other people, though, have another option called usage-based insurance, where that rate is based really only on how many miles you drive. So if you tend to not drive a lot, you might want to look into that type of insurance policy over a traditional one.
Yeah, really good information. Let's talk about taxes. I think that's a part where, you buy or sell a car. There's the government has to be paid. That shouldn't surprise anyone, but that's something that people really underestimate. There's the cost there's a sales tax in most states, but also licensing and registration fees.
Right. When you're at the dealership, they kind of roll everything together. You walk out the door, you might not really know how much you paid in taxes and title. But when you have to re-register your car, depending on where you live, you may have to pay tax every time when you register your car. Some states don't have a general property tax for their vehicles. Some states, the municipalities, they range from city to city. So we did an average of the sales tax in each state to give people an idea of what their sales tax might be in terms of buying a vehicle, but it will be different for every person depending on where you live.
Yeah, and if you don't pay it, someone's going to come knocking. Someone's going to come knocking on the door to get that. Let's talk about maintenance and repairs. Many Americans buy new cars, but those cars have warranties, and a 5-year warranty, a 7-year warranty, depending on the manufacturer. That they call it bumper to bumper. But then there are also Americans that are buying used cars. They may not come with a warranty. You may have to buy one separately. So what about those maintenance and repair costs? They seem to be going up as well.
They are the cost of oil, the cost of hiring someone to do the work for you. Those labor costs have increased a lot, and the cost of parts are still about 40% higher now than they were before the pandemic started. So all those little things are adding up. And what we might not necessarily pay attention to now is the past few summers have been really hot, record breaking, and they're only going to get worse. So rubber parts like windshield wipers, tires, they wear out faster, and we're going to have to start replacing them sooner. So if you're looking at a fancy car where those tires are just going to be very expensive to replace, you're going to have to start replacing them more frequently. And that might be something you want to think about before you buy your next car.
Well, Shannon, I could talk to you for days, weeks about this. It's such an important topic, and you have to go from place to place to get good at a job, drop your kids off to school, go to soccer practice, whatever, go to music practice. Let's talk about gas prices. They seem to be coming down a little bit, but what's the impact there? And we talked earlier on about 87 octane versus 93 octane. Know what your car takes, but what about gas prices?
That was actually the most interesting finding in our study. We found out that annual mileage can offset the higher cost of gas for many drivers. So we all know that California is famous for having really high gas prices and really bad traffic, right? But they have really good public transportation, ride sharing, things like that. And drivers in California only average around 11,000 miles per year. Now in Indiana, the cost of gas is more average. They pay about $1 less per gallon than drivers in California, but they drive around 21,000 miles per year because everything is so much more spread out. They don't have the same type of public transportation system, things like that. So they pay $2,900 a year in gas, where drivers in California pay more around $2,000 a year for gas. So it's really more about how much are you driving, how far away are your daily commutes to the grocery store, to the school, things like that, as opposed to how much you're paying per gallon.
Yeah, and that wasn't the last question. One more, just to follow up on that. The gas versus the hybrid versus the electric vehicle, any differences there? Because many Americans, they buy a Tesla, they buy a Honda, they buy a Prius. They love those EV cars. Other Americans, they want a hybrid or they want regular traditional gas.
That's something that every driver would really have to think about. Are they someone who takes long road trips? Because right now that might still be a little problematic depending on where you can charge up at. This study actually didn't include battery powered vehicles or EVs. We focus more on gas powered vehicles. But what I do want to let people know is when I was interviewing drivers who had electric vehicles, I noticed that they pay a lot more in registration. A fellow I interviewed in January, a fellow I interviewed who lived in Georgia, he says he has to pay $250 each year to register his Tesla, where his rather regular gas powered vehicle is only $50. And then you have to think about, are you installing an electric bank at your home? You have to think about those costs. So they are very different.
Yeah, and you got to think about how you're going to charge it, because that's probably going to come from the grid. You got to plug it in at your house or at one of those fast chargers. Shannon, amazing work, great study. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.